Oh, okay. Well, hello, creatives, community, kind folks out there. This is RPG with DBJ, and today is Tips and Tricks Tuesday. We are, ooh, my lighting is a little bit off. We have a weekly theme, and this week's theme is puzzles, clues, and riddles for tabletop RPGs. Hey, kitty. Yeah, I know you want to be involved as well. Now, normally each day we have a different subject. Monster Monday, today is Tips and Tricks Tuesday, World Building Wednesday, and so on. But something that's really, it's really the heart and soul of tabletop RPGs, but it's very hard to do at the table are like puzzles and riddles and clues and things like that. Hey, good morning, everybody. Rickard, Fat Ninja, always bringing the coffee. I just had a Pop-Tart, so sorry. Rickard, Rickard says, I think I kind of did Tuesday on Monday. Yeah, that seems to be a theme as well for those who may or may not be new. Our themes and goals tend to be rather fluid, and we go in places that we just naturally fall into. So we don't swim in concrete. We swim in very ephemeral waters here. All right, so puzzles and riddles. So we're going to very quickly summarize a little bit of what we did yesterday, and then bring it in today, because pretty much most of what we talked about yesterday, we're going to like extrapolate again today. All right, so puzzles. The difference between puzzle and riddles. What are they as far as you got it, Rickard. Puzzles and riddles. A short description would be thinking of riddles as being more literary, verbal, something that's written, something that is told to someone else, a parable or a haiku, or something that needs to be figured out. It usually is verbalized or written, as opposed to, and then it gives you a clue to progress in the story or uncover some kind of favor or lead you in some particular explorative direction. Excuse me. I don't have a cough button. Sorry. A puzzle, on the other hand, we can define as something that's far more physical, moving bricks around, shifting levers, jumping from pillar to post, maybe having a specific physical timing, waiting for something to pass, maybe a swinging pendulum, or a gout of fire, like from a geyser, or a blast of flame from, a magical statue or something. It could involve far more physical, although not necessarily needing to be athletic maneuvering. So, and then clues fall somewhere in the middle, because the title is Puzzles, Clues, and Riddles. And clues fall in the middle in terms of the players investigating what they need to do to either navigate the puzzle physically or uncover the clues to solve the riddle, on the other hand. So that's a very simple armchair description of what they are. Now, and how we use them. Now, we get into tips and tricks. All right. So yesterday we talked a lot about the utilizing them at the table, and you have yourself a scale, and on one side of the scale you have placing the puzzles or riddles into the player's hands, not the characters, but the player's hands. No die rolls, nothing. You may come to the table with handouts or clues or physical puzzles with little metal chains or wooden bricks, or even a Rubik's cube or something of that nature. Sorry. Wow, where did that come from? Sorry. So you have a physical representation of the puzzle or riddle given to the players to be solved or figured out or uncovered, so that the characters can progress in the story or move ahead. And then you have on the other end of the scale, so you have the physical representation given to the players. On the other end of the scale, you have essentially The players are not figuring out. The characters are figuring it out. You basically have a die roll. Oh, you have a difficulty level of 18, DC of 18. Everyone roll your intelligence or your investigate skill check or history or what have you, and you just have a straight die roll. And we talked about the moving the scale back and forth, because some would find that either one or the other completely removes one or the other out of the game. If you give everything to the players, it completely removes the capabilities of the characters. For example, I'm not a super spy. I'm not a roguish cutthroat. I'm not a wizard. I'm not a swordsman. But if you hand me myself a puzzle, my character might be able to figure something out that I personally could not. On the other hand, if you just go straight die rolls, straight intelligence check, just basically grab the dice and start rolling. As was mentioned yesterday, it really becomes a button. It becomes an easy button. It's just you just click a button and move on to the next thing without getting immersed into trying to figure out the details of what's going on. And so, therefore, instead of it being like, oh wow, this is a cool puzzle or trick, hey guys, let's get ready to figure it out. It's basically becomes a mathematical calculation. All right, I'm going to roll. You give me a help action. I get advantage. I've got the highest intelligence. Let me roll. And okay, I solved it. What's the answer? And now either way, to the extreme, I would say is probably wrong. Not wrong. You're doing yourself a disservice going to one end or the other. But I believe there's a value in turning the dial in one way or the other so that you can get the players involved in it, kind of like the role-playing game Dread uses a Jenga tower. The characters are not playing Jenga. The players are playing Jenga to find out whether they succeed or fail, and that ramps up the tension to make the players feel that, so that it falls over into what the characters feel when they attempt to perform some kind of action. Rickard says, do we say easy button, but they need to invest character resources into the skill. When I say easy button, don't get me wrong, not easy to solve, easy because of the mental energy necessary to solve it, right? It just becomes another mathematical calculation. Oh, I've got a skill of X, I'm going to add Y, give me the die roll, I rolled a Z. And in that sense, there's no investment into the parameters of what you're trying to do. Whether you want them to delve into the dark mysteries of this fictional Egyptian world in a desert and solve the riddles to explore the dungeon or something, the characters are probably not going to be involved in it. If you're only basing it on, well, we're just going to do die rolls to solve everything and keep moving on. Ricker says, yeah, but the time investment in character is not counted. Well, you could make that case for anything, right? Players who want to design characters that are either like diplomancers or swordsmen or something of that nature. Wow, it's in my throat. Those people are investing time and energy as well. But remember, the game master is a player too. I don't know where it's coming from. Sorry. The game master is a player too. And to ignore the investment the game master is putting into the game to simply put it all on the player's side, or I'm sorry, on the character side, I think it is a disservice as well. If the game master has gotten handouts or studied some riddles or wanted to make this immersive game, I think it behooves the players to say, hey, you know what? This person went out into their time and effort and created this engaging environment. So why don't we partake of it? Right. And, it's as opposed to, yeah, I know you spent 36 hours designing this dungeon, but, I made my character. So whatever, I'm going to roll the dice. Ricker says, I do think the DM is playing a different game, though, just like a DJ is not a dancer. True, but not a different game. They're just playing it in a different way, right? A DJ loves to see people dancing on the dance floor. If you don't give the DJ energy, the DJ is not having fun. They're all engaged in the same thing, though. Hey, we all want to have fun. So one person gets energy from the others. If the players are not engaging in what the DM is putting forth in front of everyone, then then why bother in making that engagement any further? That's usually where the problems come in terms of using like puzzles and riddles and such, is that I would say one tip and trick would be not to surprise your players with like puzzles and riddles and such, because some people just are not going to engage in those kind of things. And better to know that up front as a dungeon master before you start doing the Google foo and diving deep into finding some of these really cool riddles that you think would would flesh out your world, whether it's a dungeon or, I don't know, a spy ring, and they use riddles to communicate with each other or something like that. Like, before you do that, there are many people who just don't like those things. Some people just don't like mysteries. They've never liked a mystery. They've never liked figuring things out. Or in their personal lives, they do it all the time. And when they come to the table, they just want to kill things, right? So understanding, okay, Rick. He said, but the DJ's job is to get people on the floor, not to make it hard for dancers to get on the floor. So it's not a zero-sum thing, in my opinion, but each DM has their own style. Again, performers feel energy, right? It's not a DJ's job to force people to dance. Is to make an environment where people would want to, and then those people who want to hear the music give their energy back to, let's say, the DJ or the performer or whoever it is, right? If people don't get on the dance floor, but they're like, I love this music, but I'm not going to show that I enjoy it, or fold their arms and go, this is stupid, then they're negatively impacting what it is they came there to enjoy. You know what I mean? Same thing for any type of performer. Performers want that energy back, and players are not passive. Players are active and should actively be participating, as opposed to folding their arms and waiting for the thing that they want to show up, and then never engaging in things that they don't like. Giving people, it's far more productive to be positive in any kind of activity. Yeah. So when it comes to using puzzles and riddles, again, make sure the players know what they're getting into. Metagame the hell out of it. I know using metagaming is a nasty word, but in its actual sense, it's just above board. Tell people, hey guys, listen, in this new part of the adventure, or this part of my world, or I really wanted to explore something, there are going to be a lot of clues and riddles and puzzles and things, and I just want you guys to know about it. Because if the players are not of their mindset, either naturally, like they normally just never gravitate towards that kind of thing, or in their personal life, maybe they encountered something the week before and they're just not interested in that kind of thing, you as the dungeon master will know that right away. Well, yeah, I agree. Session 0, and not just session 0. I mean, for example, if someone had a death in the family, you're 8 sessions in, you can't predict that in session 0. But letting people know that between the game or when that game starts is pretty important. So it's like, hey guys, I'm not really mentally into this thing, and letting other people know that up front is better than engaging in the story and then like checking out in the middle of it, and everyone is just like, what the hell's going on? And then you have to explain afterwards. Better to explain that beforehand. Hey, Infinite, what's going on? Faulty Doombot says, why not a hybrid of the two? Do a physical puzzle and grant hints, or solve parts for the players based on success successful skill checks. And that's exactly where I think 99% of us do that anyway. But some people, and unfortunately in today's society, it seems that there are only extremes and there's no middle ground. I absolutely do agree with you, Faulty Doombot, that of course you do a hybrid of both, right? I mean, we tips and trick. Here's another tip and trick. Don't fall into the analysis paralysis, right? Yesterday we talked about closed doors or locked doors, both physically, both in reality and intellectually. Meaning, don't give your players a puzzle or riddle that if they don't solve it, they can't continue the adventure. Most of those puzzles and riddles, like in video games and things like that, maybe even some novels or stories, are like side quest kind of things where if they don't solve it, they can still go down the hallway and exit out the door at the end of the hall. But the riddles or the puzzles on the side may give them clues to help them succeed or give them some greater detail into the world or defeating their enemy or a magic item or another piece of maybe some code if they're a hacker or another type of weapon attachment or whatever the case may be, whereas they can still continue the game. There's nothing more frustrating than getting to a locked door and not being able to get through it. I talked about this yesterday about very old original adventures for Dungeons and Dragons modules back in the the late 70s, early 80s, where the players would miss a secret door or not get the proper key to open up a locked door. And both the dungeon master sitting there frustrated because they want their players to go through the rest of the adventure, and the players sit there frustrated because they can't figure out how to get to the next step. And no locked doors. You put a trip, put an obstacle or a puzzle or some clues or whatever. No locked doors. Allow your game or adventure or the progress continue on. And I think with a hybrid of the two, you might want to set yourself an internal or even an external time limit. What was suggested yesterday was get one of those cheap sand timers and flip it over. Usually the sand timers are between 1 to 3 minutes or so, maybe not much more than that. And boom, put it on the table. And if they can't figure it out, okay, default to the skill rolls. Or the skill rolls, like Doombot says, the skill rolls may give them clues to then solve the puzzle or the riddle. So we're going to flow into some tips and tricks for using puzzles for physical, social, and exploration. So let's get in, not physical, more combat, the 3 pillars of gaming: combat, social, exploration. So, and Rickard says you could also do a skill challenge, which I think I've done them for many years before 5th edition. Before 4th edition, but skill challenges are also a thing where it doesn't necessarily mean like a pass or fail simple skill challenge done once. You could do stacked skill challenges. So for example, a very simple one that comes to mind is the classic maze, because we talked about the Minotaur. But anyway, the classic maze. Hey, PCs need to get from one end of the maze to the other. And you could say, well, you need 3 skill challenges to get through the maze. And maybe the players may come up with the skills they want to use, or you may say, well, you need to use investigation. Maybe survival is a possibility as well. And maybe some other skill, maybe history. And using every time they succeed, they get that much further through the maze. Each failure sets them back, and they may have either a time limit to get through the challenge. So there may be a specific amount of time of success or failure, maybe before the maze locks the doors or fills with acid or fluid or something like that. Or there may be, it could be you against someone else. So whoever gets the most successes wins. So the players may be going against a rival group or a monster like the Minotaur hunting them. And so running from the Minotaur through the maze, each time, of course, the Minotaur is not near them. Players make a roll, Minotaur makes a skill roll. Whoever gets the highest roll wins, and then they basically check mark off a success, and then based on how fast they go. Hey, Christy, hey, what's going on? Uh, heard you were not in Hawaii, that you were in the Far East somewhere. Anyway, Zevron says a puzzle or trap room I was subjected to was a room starting to slant at 45 degrees downwards, and at the end of the hallway was a portal that led to the beginning of the hall. We'd fall faster and faster. Yeah, that's a classic trap in. Oh, what's the classic trap module? Wow, my brain literally just like wiped out. Anyway, the classic death trap module had that exact same thing. The tilting hallway, and as it Tomb of Horrors, yes, it without the question mark, yes, Tomb of Horrors. Yeah, the hallway starts to tilt. You start beginning to slide down the hallway even further. There's a portal at the end that makes you go to the beginning of the hallway. You keep sliding forward until the hallway turns into a shaft, and then you just keep falling infinitely down the shaft. Yeah, it's pretty nasty. Rickard says the skill challenge, let the players be creative with what they can do to help, shifting the focus of creating problem solving from solving the actual puzzle to how can I use my skills. Oh, you're in Japan, cool, sweet. And again, like Rickard is saying, it's not necessarily you may not want to devolve into how can I solve the puzzle, because that's where we all want to go to, right? As a DM, I'm like, okay, they need to solve this puzzle. Players like, oh, we have a puzzle, let's solve it. But instead, it could be how can I use my skills to get through this particular thing. Oh wow, sorry, Seb. Now, as an example for puzzles in combat do not necessarily need to be a man-made puzzle that we're thinking of, like the Rubik's Cube. A puzzle in combat could be, here's a classic example. Player characters are warriors. They're on a battlefield. Things have gone wrong. They need to save a lot of people. Maybe there's a horde of 10,000 coming towards them. Where they're located is not near where the defenses are. For example, the drawbridge might be down. There are defense systems that haven't been activated, such as lighting the oil that's been spread throughout through like ditches in the ground. There may be siege weapons that need to be moved. Yeah, Harry, what's going on there? There could be any number of things that the players may have to rush towards, move into position, activate, close, etc. Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks for the thumbs. I appreciate it, guys, man. But again, in combat, instead of the players again getting Prue says how to get from A to B on a timer or during a battle is a fine puzzle, I feel. Yeah, Infinite says, yeah, like puzzles in combat, DBJ. Yeah, you guys are silly. So a puzzle in combat doesn't necessarily need to be an air quotes puzzle that you find in a book. It could be, hey, we need to get from A to B at a particular time, and the danger of getting from A to B might be the situation. Players need to close the drawbridge, but they have to run out in the open, and there are archers everywhere, right? The idea may be, okay, how do we get from A to B as fast as we can, but as safely as we can? Someone may come up with the idea of why don't we get behind a wagon or run behind cover, or someone may be faster than the other player characters and say, well, I'll run ahead and draw fire while you guys come behind, and then we can then raise the drawbridge or close the gates or something before the enemy horde comes in, or whatever the case may be. And Infinite says, not really puzzle as in a series of practical obstacles. DBJ is talking about it pretty much, which I guess my feeling is that, yes, I absolutely agree. There are a number of physical obstacles. The puzzle, and I'm being very, very generalized here. I'm being extremely generous with the description of a combat puzzle, is that you could have things situated in your environment, or you've situated for the players and player characters to engage in the environment, to to push and pull and move and get behind and use as cover and things like that to allow them to enhance their ability to survive. And by doing that, you've created essentially like a Zelda puzzle, right? Hey, if we move these two large objects together, we can use that as cover. Well, normally it wasn't cover before, but now you've given them something else, and it's just combat pieces, right? Is it an obstacle? Of course, it's an obstacle to navigate. Are there do you want to give them physical objects to move in and around your environment? Yeah, you can give them that, and maybe they figure it out, right? I'm going to take cover up into that water tower or something and use that as a practical place to shoot people while they can't shoot at me while I'm up inside of the water tower. Or my mind is drawing to a blank right now, but anything like lighting a wagon on fire and having it rush towards the enemy or something of that nature, letting the players basically use and abuse the environment and giving them the ability to solve the problem that they've encountered. Yeah, Prue says race to the exit. Zev mentions if you have save or fail, even for things as simple as cutting a net, you're caught in, or track where the bandits went. Even if the rogue has a +10 to the roll with advantage, that's when they roll a 1. That usually happens all the time, man. Yeah. Yeah, you guys are talking about time limits, adding time limits. That can be, and again, adding like the time limits, you got a session 0 or at least session before game. Like if the players are getting into the analysis paralysis thing where they're overthinking things so much that it's taking forever for the action to flow, you know, sometimes you got to just put a limit to it and go, guys, I get it. I know you want to do the perfect thing at the perfect time every round for every combat, but you can't stop up. You can't stop the flow of the game for 20 minutes every time somebody wants to make a die roll because you guys are page flipping, right? Yeah, Impetus is use a 60-second timer, which makes for a faster game. Rickard mentioned that it should be said that the time mindset is very different. Is very different when you have rounds rather than free flowing time. Someone taking 10 minutes to thinking of how to solve a puzzle while in rounds. Yeah, well, part of that is the fact, again, the metagame part, right? I'm not a warrior with a sword who's been in 18 battles, so it's balancing the act of, well, if I take a minute or two to think of my action, that's my character knowing exactly what to do at the right time, right? It's the wizard, the character who's playing the wizard, who's flipping through the book to look for their spells, and takes 80 seconds to do it. In character is the wizard who knows exactly what they're doing in 6 seconds. You know what I mean? And it's balancing that out. Prue says 2-minute tabletop just made an awesome battle map that was basically the inside of a rolling tube, holes in it, monsters popping in on timers, cover. It looked very fun. Wow, that's kind of cool. I like that. I like that a lot. Zev says if you're tracking bandits and it's not raining and the bandits aren't making an attempt to hide tracks, just let them reach the camp and rest fully. You guys are weird. All right, so for social puzzles and traps, puzzles and riddles, for doing it socially, I think a very simple method of doing that is to have like I mentioned before, spy network, thieves guild, cutthroats, maybe a rebel, some kind of rebel alliance, or revolutionary factors that are using riddles to communicate or to pass on knowledge, or given to people who are trusted within the organization, and the players may need to uncover the riddles and solve the riddles to allow them to go undercover, maybe within the organization, or the players themselves are rebels against a tyrannical leader. And in order for them to find caches of weapons or uh, maybe magical items, or find allies, or to set up a trap for the tyranny that's taken over this land. It's possible that there's communication with riddles, and those riddles might be through cell networks. So, for example, there isn't one overriding leadership. Maybe in the rebel forces, they may be cells where they don't know of each other's movements. So the only way they can trust each other is to leave clues and to leave riddles, or maybe even puzzles that need to be solved in order for them to maybe go into the subterranean go into a subterranean realm, or to open up secret doors, or even connect with people who are allies of them, who will only reveal themselves if certain code words or riddles or such are made. So Zev says, also assume if your players say they searched the wall, that they searched the whole wall and nearby ceiling and floor. They would check every inch. It's not fair to say you weren't specific. Oh yeah, that's some childish ass BS right there. With the, well, you didn't say you were moving the chair, where underneath the chair is a hidden latch or something. I always default. It's better to default to the character's professional ability than the players and what they say. I'm not a ranger, but my ranger, 5th level ranger, would know how to pack up their gear and load up their bag and leave for the next day, right? If me as a player, I didn't say I was packing up my tools, it's unfair for as a GM to say, hey, well, you didn't say you were packing your stuff up, that kind of thing. So I agree with Zev. Like, just default into assuming that if the players are describing something to you and how they're trying to survive, trying to solve the puzzle or the riddle, that they fully encompass what they're looking at. Hey, if they look through a book, they don't have to describe they're flipping through every page. Assume that they are actually reading a book. Zev says, in Skyrim, the Thieves Guild has what it calls shadow marks throughout the world. A rich house that's a good target has one mark, while dangerous areas have another. Oh yeah. In our own reality, there were hobos, and hobos used to spray paint or use chalk or whatnot to mark walls, and it became its own language and would warn them of dangers and such, which is another way to reward players flowing into the exploration part of it, to reward players if they find specific clues or riddles or puzzles and things of that nature. Now, Ricker says, to play devil's advocate, isn't the "you weren't specific" the same as not having roles to solve a puzzle because it's the easy button? Yeah. But again, those are if you're the type of person who's an extremist, then yeah. But saying, hey, I'm going to check the wall, and then going, oh, you're going to check the wall, cool. Okay, no. Now roll your investigation check. Whereas the other player who's like, well, I wasn't planning on checking the wall, I was just watching outside in the hallway, probably wouldn't get that check. And of course, as always, read the table, right? If you as the dungeon master created the game and you like smack your head, mentally, like, oh shoot, I didn't realize that if they didn't find this room, they're not going to be able to the secret door, they're not going to be able to continue. Just let them find the secret door. If they check the wall, just give them the secret door. On the other hand, if that secret door hides a magic item, then you might want to be like, okay, tell me what you're doing. and tell me specifically. Well, I'm checking the wall. Okay. Oh, you're checking all the walls? Yeah. I'm going to do that. Oh, okay. All right, make a roll. And then you're like, yeah, you find the Holy Avenger that's hidden behind the secret door. And again, ebb and flow, that kind of stuff. Bruce says, as a DM, I try always to assume a good level of competence in everyday life and skills in their class use frequently. Shoot, that's his own subject right there, about the differences between the player's capabilities and the character's capabilities, and both mixing the two and then making a separation of the two. Yeah, it says, oh God, I didn't think they'd be this dumb. One of my players has a doctorate. What the fuck? Yeah. But so um, for exploration, as far as puzzles and riddles, I believe one of the things is basically if you're going to bother giving a puzzle or a riddle in the game, if you're going to allow failure, reward them for succeeding in it. Give them the clue that leads them to the next thing. Let them find the item, or let them find the special potion that's going to enhance their ability to survive, or whatever gift or reward that comes at the end of figuring out the puzzle or the riddle. But basically give them to it. Yeah. We talked about like the high intelligent character and the low intelligent player, or vice versa. Yeah, and part of that is just a meta thing. Um, I joked around about the dumb character but the intelligent player. Hey, thanks, Christy. I appreciate that. Thanks for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Thanks for you haven't even been here in a while and you're doing that, so I appreciate it. You're the thumb was good enough, but I appreciate that greatly. That's awesome. Um, Bruce says, I think my biggest fear as a relatively inexperienced DM when it comes to puzzles, clues, and riddles is loss of energy and pacing. And I really believe like that's a big thing too, right? Where losing the pacing is very difficult because on one hand, most puzzles and riddles require a lot of brain energy. There's not a lot of physical activity involved in figuring them out. Most people want to sit down, stop, and like study it, pull out their phone, pull out a book, get together, talk it over at the table. And if you're in the middle of a heated battle, or your players are running through the city streets escaping the guards, or they're trying to outrun a flood, and you give them this puzzle in the middle of it, it's like it can slow the pacing. And so, yeah, absolutely. The pacing and the flow is really important, especially when we all have limited amount of time. Uh, some people at the table feel the ebb and flow of time differently. Some people are just like, look, players are like, look, let's just go, 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 go. Others are very comfortable. Some players are so comfortable that they will do a whole game doing nothing but sitting back and just intellectually thinking about the solving a riddle and just sitting there going, hmm, hmm, I mean, for 45 minutes. Some are just that way. So, absolutely. Rickard says, PC, I'm investigating the room. DM, where do you investigate? PC, the walls? DM, just the walls, huh? PC, no, and I'm also searching for traps, and yes, even on that chair I was about to sit in. Yeah, that's a thing, right? That's there are some DMs that are like really like uh anal about that. Like, oh, what are you specifically doing? How are you specifically pulling the chair out? It's like, don't do that. Wow. Uh, Seb says, to be fair, stats aren't always comparative. I love rolling charismatic characters. I'm not that charismatic, regardless of what I've been told. Yeah, me too. I'm with you on that one, man. You and me. All right. So, yeah, Dennis Drangle says, I pull the lever up or down. Now, Tomb of Horrors literally has that trap in there where you've got the three levers in the middle and you have to decide which ones you pull up or down and all that kind of stuff. And you can get into some players wanting to retcon that and save or suck situations and those kind of things where oh, so which lever do you move up? I move the middle lever up. I move the two on the sides down. Okay, and you start looking at the make a roll percentile on my table or something, and you could go down some really bad uh, um deep dives with that one, with players like all pissed off at you and stuff. Prue says, my three players will absolutely take the wind out of their own sails given the chance. They're extremely analytical minded, which is part of why I use timers so much. Yeah. I Some of us are very intellectually minded, and we'll sit back and fold our arms and get frustrated over the puzzle and completely ignore the fact that the ship is sinking. you know, Infinite says, "Yeah, DBJ, I had a couple take almost 2 hours to discover the result to my puzzle network. That's when I found that I make really good puzzles, but." Really difficult ones. Yeah, and that's sometimes it's kind of weird. Well, your 10-foot pole is a mimic. That's a great one. Oh God, you guys are crazy. Um, but really, unfortunately, sometimes we just have to hit our players with the clue stick over and over again. Yesterday we talked about the 3 clue rule. Hey, if it's not written on the wall, it's stuck in a piece of paper. Someone writes it on their hand. Someone puts it on their forehead. Like you have an NPC literally spell out the answer to it. Sometimes you got to hit people with the clue stick and move on. And again, don't let your puzzles or riddles stop the ebb and flow of the game. Let it be an aside, especially if you have your more intellectual players, to say, okay, keep moving. You can take the piece of paper that has the riddle on it with you to continue the adventure, whether you're going through the swamps and mountains and such, and that player is still looking at that piece of paper like, I've got to solve this riddle. What the hell's going on? You guys talk about checking for traps. Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. Oh man, Zeb says the moment the DM says there's no traps, that sets up an expectation and takes out any drama. Yeah, and that that's a whole nother theme itself as when it comes to die rolls. Who does the DM roll behind a screen? Do they let the player roll? What is the answer to a roll that a player fails when other players want to jump in on it? Player rolls to spot traps, fails the roll, is told there are no traps. Does that mean there are no traps, or does it mean they failed the roll to find the traps? And why would anybody else know that they failed a roll to find traps when they themselves made a roll and found out there were no traps? Right? That's its own meta thing. That might be a subject. That's like a one-day thing, but that's probably a really good subject. Yeah. Right. Rickard says you see no traps. Exactly. But also the players see the roll, the failed roll. Oh, I rolled a 6. That adds to the meta part of the players going, yeah, there's no traps that you can see, which of course brings up the idea of the other players, jumping on the bandwagon going, I want to roll. Right. As opposed to in our own reality, if you drive down the street and you see no cross traffic, you don't ask everyone else in the car, hey, does anybody else see cross traffic? Or do you just proceed through the intersection and someone runs a red light? Right. It's you don't see anything because you don't see anything, and you have no reason to expect there to be anything, unless you're just paranoid, and then you get into analysis paralysis. So back to puzzles and traps. Backseat trap finders. Yeah, make a left. There's a trap in the way. No, there isn't. Yes, there is. So, again, puzzles and traps. It would behoove us. We mentioned this yesterday, but it would behoove us to understand and be extremely flexible as to your players solving your riddles or your puzzles. I know it feels really good to have a riddle that has one specific answer, or a puzzle, the classic lever puzzle, or the classic move the block puzzle, or something that has one specific answer. But unless it's very dynamic and allows your players to really engage in it, let's just something, I call it gameable. If it's something for them to like really move around and pick with and choose and things of that nature, to really chew on, like a really good meal. Be flexible as far as your players being able to solve the actual puzzle or the riddle. An example would be, you're talking about something. Seb says, I remember in the new Shira, wow. There's a process named Entrappa. She runs a castle that's an ever-shifting trap. None of them are lethal, but it's a maze-like and goes up and down, sideways, backwards, etc. I would agree. Like, if you had a series of, just follow me on this, like series of giant wooden blocks or something, or stone blocks that the players can move into particular positions. And as they move each block, maybe it uncovers a monster or uncovers a pit or uncovers a doorway. And if they move them into a particular position, they can get out of this room. Then that's cool, as long as they can interact with it. And maybe it creates some dangers. Maybe it reveals some really cool things that they find, but eventually they have to move the blocks to eventually escape. That's cool. If they're just sitting around just moving blocks, and I move the block left, it doesn't work. I move it backwards, it doesn't work. Okay, I stack one block on the other, and all you're doing as a DM is just going nope, 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 nope. At some point, you just have to understand that the players are doing their best. And or maybe they're not picking up the clues, so you didn't hit them with the clue stick hard enough, and you don't want to sit there and be frustrated, have you frustrated as dungeon master because your players can't figure out your puzzle or riddle because you spent so much time on it. Some people just aren't in the correct mindset at that particular time, at the particular place to figure it out when you already know the answer. Yeah, and it says, well, DBJ, remember D&D 3X, the rules for taking 10 and taking 20? Why not bring that back? Taking 10 is actually kind of returned without them saying it. Armor class is taking 10. And then every skill has a passive check. Every skill has a passive check of 10, and if you have advantage, it's +5, and it's -5 with disadvantage. So yeah, it's back. They haven't specifically said that's what it is, but that's exactly what like armor class is. Armor class is 10, which is taking 10. It's not rolling a d20. So wearing, what is it, chainmail, I think gives you like a 14 armor class. Essentially, it's taking 10 plus a 4, right? Yeah, Shiro, you guys are silly. Rickard says you could do a prep technique before check. DM, what is your character expecting? Yeah, there you go. PC, well, it's a dungeon, so they're expecting traps. Rolls a 2. DM, you are sure there are traps, but can't find any. Thank you very much. Rickard brings up a point of what are the players and the characters expecting out of what they're doing, right? It's not a vacuum. A fighter in the middle of a battle is not going to be surprised so much if someone comes out of nowhere with a blade and whatnot. Now they could fail a roll or initiative roll or fail to spot that person, but they're not going to be surprised by being attacked. You're in a dungeon, you're in a dangerous place, there's creatures, there's going to be traps, there's going to be dangers and such. So I assume, I take the position that the characters are professional adventurers, and they are the type of individuals that will check for traps, that you're going to check behind doors, that you're going to be sensitive and listen for dangers automatically, which is where passive checks come from, and where the idea that instead of forcing the character playing the rogue to do, I'm going to check for traps every time I find something, that you as the DM take it upon yourself to go, look, they're a professional. They're going to check for, every time they go home and get ready to open up their own door to their house, they're going to check for traps. So why wouldn't you just presume that, even urge the player, something doesn't feel right about this. You might want to check this out a little bit more. And the player's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like, look, something about this just is off. Maybe it doesn't look as dusty, or maybe you think you've read this in a book before, or you heard legends about this place. Rickard says, then the low roll just becomes you haven't found anything to dissuade you from the original assumption, rather than you failed. Yeah. That's its own subject too, right? Pass fail versus what you're talking about. You haven't found anything that persuades you otherwise, or you found a clue, but you really haven't found the danger yet, or you found a danger, but you think there's something else on the horizon, but it just hasn't struck you yet. As opposed to doing the "you failed" thing, which I think is a little bit disingenuous to people. I think we default to that. It's the same problem we have with armor class, right? Oh, you missed, you hit, as opposed to your weapon failed to penetrate or was ineffective glancing off of the armor and shield, rather than you missed. You know, if it says, weird question, if you have, say, 12 traps in a dungeon, what if you give the party 36 trap finding beads, giving them a maximum number of attempts to find all your traps? I don't know. I mean, unless they have an item that allows them to do that, I'm not sure. But I could see someone finding that. you could set up a puzzle or a riddle to have them find the things that help them find the traps in the first place, which would be awesome in and of itself. Yeah, Zev says helpful hint. No, not every place has to be booby trapped. We can have traps. Example: an ancient burial ground that was open to the public wasn't trapped because it would endanger the civilians, but misstepping and leaning too far on a wall may cause it to fall on you. I'm a complete proponent of natural situation traps, not a spring trap that shoots an arrow, but like you said, a crumbling wall, an abandoned building, those kind of things. And again, a puzzle may be trying to navigate your way around something that might be crumbling. Sure, it's a physical obstacle, but at the same time, it is the players trying to figure out how to survive getting from A to B through maybe a crumbling bridge or collapsing building or something like that. Because A, you got to get the hell out of there, and B, you have to navigate your way to get out of there. Maybe the cavern is collapsing in on them. So yeah. Yeah, DBJ Infinite says DBJ not auto find, but every skill check costs them a bead. You might have some players balk at that because if they blow their load up front, maybe they fall into maybe other traps or hazards later on, and they may, a player could make the argument, why would I not be able to find the last 5 traps? I'm still looking for them, right? So although maybe you could, I wouldn't get rid of it. Maybe there's something that helps them find it. Not necessarily a bead, but maybe there's a map or something that they found that allows them to find their way through it. An example would be using riddles to say the proper code words when they go into a town, to find a proper contact. After saying the riddle, the answer of the riddle to the contact then leads them to a place that has a map. The map then tells them of the dangers in the dungeon, which would be your idea of using the beads. And then the dangers to the dungeon allows them to avoid specific hazards that are in the dungeon. Whereas if they weren't able to solve the riddle in the beginning, they now have to navigate those dangers without some help. So yes, we're definitely going to flow into in World Building Wednesday about building a world filled with nothing but puzzles and riddles. And I know traps happen to fall into this, although they don't necessarily, like Zev said, not every place. Yeah, Dennis Strango. Gandalf, what's the elven word for friend? Not every place has to have a trap that causes some kind of harm or something. Yeah, says it's Indiana Jones heaven, of course. The idea of, like, why does something exist naturally within the environment, or something that was man-made for a specific reason? For example, traps could literally trap people, so they can trap you, not kill you, but just hold you in place. A trap could track you, so something could happen that maybe releases a creature that tracks you, or you're sprayed with some kind of chemical or paint or something, so you're easily trackable. It could be the players could avoid a trap, and that trap could then activate other dangers further within the dungeon. So stepping on a specific plate could actually activate other traps further in the dungeon, whereas if they avoid the plate, or maybe they got the intelligence or the knowledge from a contact within the city that, hey, listen, by the way, avoid this pressure plate in the room because that activates the wizard's traps further deeper in the dungeon, thereby allowing them to pass by safely. And also, foreshadowing is a great thing to do for puzzles and riddles as well. Foreshadowing the skeletons of people, crushed up against the wall or poisoned or, impaled with spears or something. And the players are like, I wonder what, maybe there's a spear trap. There's a skeleton against the wall, with cobwebs all over it and spears stuck in its chest, Zed says a trap could be a gas that tries to put you to sleep and gives you a level of exhaustion. Exactly. And again, we're far past the save or suck, or save or die original, OD&D areas. Hey, make a death save. Up, you failed, you're dead. More or less, we want complications, and like Zev's saying, like a level of exhaustion complicates things as opposed to save or die. Sure, there are things where save or suck. You drop an item, you get exhaustion, blinded, incapacitated. What are some other ones? In our own supplements to critical hit, we have despair, which is the mental version of physical exhaustion, that kind of things. Yeah. Tesla says, Tesla Ranger says, just thought of Raiders of the Lost Ark dart trap. Indy spots the trap, figures out how it works, but then has to run through the trap anyway when the boulder trap springs. That's very true. That's actually quite true, that Indiana Jones actually had to navigate his way back past the traps he already found, and through investigation and a little bit of foreshadowing, figured out what the trap was to begin with. So yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Prue says, I love that, Tesla, because he definitely hopes how much that's going to hurt. Yeah. Oh, man. Dennis Drangler says, I like that system in Xanathar's about complex traps that you roll initiative against. Yeah, of course. And oh man, that's Third Pillar Thursday. Anyway, but absolutely. Role places. Man, TV chat, you know me. Yeah, OG, original Grognard, hell yeah. But complex traps, puzzles, those kind of things are great. The reason why traps get such a bad rap is because they're one and done, right? Hey, roll a die to see if you see this trap. Oh, you missed it. Boom, you got hit. And the DM laughs at everyone, and the players just like grunt and they're pissed off. But if you have something that's very interactive, like the classic swinging pendulum trap, right? You get like 3 or 4 or 5 swinging pendulums that swing back and forth. You now have something that's interactive. It's gameable. It's yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. I mean, it's something where the players can navigate through it. Some that are quicker might be able to time themselves to dodge past the different pendulums. Some players may pause between the pendulums. Someone may try to stop the pendulums from swinging. Maybe there's enemies going after the PCs. So there's a time limit on that. Like, do we run through the pendulums or do we take our time? Maybe a character is strong enough to stop at least one of the pendulums to allow maybe some of the other players to get through. So something that's gameable, something that where they can really interact with it, I think is a far better trap than a save or suck. Something that is continuous, that grows through expanse. Oh, in another word, something that escalates. Yeah, it's getting that time. Yeah, we've hit the hour mark, and of course we squirreled this entire episode, but I figured we would because puzzles, riddles, traps, and all those kind of things are so not complicated, but they are. There's no problem with us putting them in the game. The problem is once they're in the game, how like it's like, how do you use it? It's almost like it's like cooking a meal for a bunch of your best friends, and you haven't asked them what their preferences are. and but you want to try something different. It's cooking. It's like cooking a roast and finding out one of your best friends is like a vegetarian or something, or someone visiting is vegetarian, right? Or, hey, I made this with peanut oil. Like, I'm allergic to peanuts. Like, oh, I didn't know that. It's basically that's what puzzles and riddles and traps and clues and things like that are. It's not really putting them in the game. It's like, once you get them in the game, how are people going to receive it? How am I as a DM going to adjudicate what my players try to do, right? So yeah, Prue, yeah, got to get ready for work. Anyway, guys, tomorrow is World Building Wednesday. We are going to, and I'm going to be try to hyper focus us. We're going to build a world filled with puzzles and riddles, and maybe some traps too. We're going to fill a world, like design a world. Why is this in the world, and how we can have some fun with it. Maybe part of your world is that way, where they use like haiku or riddles or metaphors and similes and things like that. Maybe they use that to communicate. They put it on walls. Maybe there's some kind of hidden language that reveals some ancient civilization or something. So yeah. So Prue, have a great one. Christy, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Everyone, and I hope you're having fun in Japan. Anyway, everybody have a great one. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great day. By the way, if you're new to the channel, click on one of the videos you'll see here pretty soon when it loads up. Yeah, Pig Latin. Yeah, absolutely. Everybody, Avhe Udday, Ud Day. Oh man, I forgot my Pig Latin. I haven't used it in so long. My grandparents used to use it all the time, man. As a kid, I was like, how do you figure that out? Anyway, guys, everyone have a great one. See ya. Bye.